8 silent signs someone is deeply attached to you without ever saying it. Psychology tricks. The deepest love is often the quietest. There's a kind of attachment that never announces itself. No confessions, no emotional speeches, just silent signals that speak through actions. Psychology shows us this truth. When someone is deeply attached, they don't always say it, they show it. They remember the small things you forgot you shared. They stay present in your life without needing a reason. They react when you pull away, even if they pretend they're fine. Their attention lingers, and their care feels steady, not loud. It's subtle, it's calm, and it's real. If you've noticed these signs, understand this: they've likely been emotionally connected to you long before you realized it. Sign 1. They remember the smallest details about you, even the ones you forgot. There's a moment most people miss. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with a confession. It doesn't look like love. It happens quietly. You mention something once casually, almost carelessly. A story, a preference, a passing comment you didn't think mattered. And weeks, sometimes months later, they bring it up. Not to impress you, not to prove anything, just naturally. And you pause for a second and think, how did they remember that? Psychology says this is not accidental. The human brain is extremely selective. It forgets most of what we hear. Most conversations fade within hours. Details blur. Words dissolve. So when someone remembers your smallest details, it's because your presence has emotional weight in their mind, not logical weight, emotional weight. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. When someone is deeply attached to you, their brain tags information related to you as important for emotional survival. These details don't just enter their memory, they get stored. And storage only happens when emotion is involved. You might think maybe they're just attentive, but attentiveness without attachment is temporary. Attachment turns attention into retention. Think about it. They don't just remember facts about you, they remember patterns, how your mood changes when you're tired, how you go quiet before you open up, how you smile when you pretend something didn't hurt. This means they're not just listening to your words, they're observing you. And observation without intention doesn't last. But attachment makes people study you subconsciously, not in a creepy way, in a deeply human way. Because when someone is emotionally connected, their brain constantly asks one quiet question: how do I stay close to this person? Remembering details is one of the brain's answers. It allows them to comfort you better, understand you faster, feel closer to you without saying it. This is why they sometimes surprise you by saying the exact thing you needed to hear, even when you never asked. Sometimes they remember things you don't even remember saying. That's because when you spoke, you were just talking, but when they listened, they were connecting. Their emotional brain was switched on. Psychologists call this emotional encoding, when information is stored not as data, but as feeling. That's why when they think of you, they don't just think of your face. Here's the most important truth. People only remember deeply what they are afraid to lose subconsciously. Even if they've never admitted it, even if they act casual, even if they deny their feelings, memory doesn't lie. So if someone remembers the smallest things about you, the things no one else notices, you are already living somewhere permanent inside their mind, an attachment that deep doesn't fade quietly. Sign 2. They feel your emotions without you explaining them. Sign 2 reveals itself in silence, not speeches. It shows up when they feel your emotions without you ever explaining them. There is a rare kind of connection that doesn't need translation. You don't say you're tired, yet they hear it in your voice. You don't say you're upset, yet they sense it in the way you go quiet. You don't say something is wrong, yet they ask anyway. That moment matters more than most men realize. Psychology gives this a name: emotional attunement. It is the process where two nervous systems grow familiar with each other over time, and that familiarity does not come from interest alone. It only forms when emotional attachment already exists. When someone is deeply attached to you, their brain begins tracking your emotional patterns automatically, not as a strategy, not as a performance, but instinctively, like a seasoned driver who feels the road without staring at it. They know when you're pretending to be okay. They hear it when your laughter sounds slightly off. They feel it when your energy is heavier than usual. What surprises most men is this: they often notice it before you do. Attachment sharpens perception. The more emotionally invested someone becomes, the more sensitive they are to subtle changes in you. A small shift in tone, shorter replies, less presence. Their system reacts immediately. That is why they ask, "Are you okay?" when you planned to say nothing. And even when you answer, "I'm fine," they hesitate. Not because they doubt your words, but because their emotional system already knows something doesn't align. That gap between what you say and what they feel is where attachment lives. This is not magic, and it is not coincidence. Psychology explains this through mirror neurons. These are the parts of the brain that allow humans to feel what others feel. When attachment is strong, those neurons fire more intensely. Your sadness stirs something in them. Your anxiety unsettles them. Your calm steadies them. Your joy lifts them. Your emotional state no longer stays contained within you. It travels, quietly, naturally. This is not something people can fake for long. Someone who is merely interested listens to your words. Someone who is attached listens to your emotional signals. That difference is everything. Words are easy to hear. Emotions are not. Emotions require presence, investment, consistency. That is why, when you pull back emotionally, they feel uneasy, even if they cannot explain why. They sense the distance before it becomes visible. They feel the shift before it is spoken. And instead of responding with dramatic gestures, they respond with presence. They check in. They stay close. They offer comfort without being asked. Because when someone is attached, your emotional balance affects theirs. You being off makes them feel off. Do not confuse this with mind reading. That is not what is happening. This is familiarity, built through emotional exposure over time. Be clear about that. A high-value man does not force connection. He creates safety. Safety allows emotional attunement to grow naturally. That is why men who understand this do not chase reactions. They cultivate consistency. They do not demand explanations. They notice patterns. They do not interrogate emotions. They hold space. That is masculine energy in its most grounded form: calm, present, observant. When you operate this way, you don't need to ask if someone is attached. Their nervous system tells you before their mouth ever does. Be honest with yourself. If someone consistently feels your emotional shifts, responds to your silence, notices your heaviness, and senses your distance without being told, it is because your emotional state matters to their sense of stability. That is not casual. That is not surface-level interest. That is attachment. You are no longer just someone they talk to. You are part of their emotional environment. Your mood influences the atmosphere they live in. People do not allow that kind of influence unless the bond already runs deep. You must understand how this connects to your role as a high-value man. Men who attract women without forcing it often do so because they are emotionally consistent, not emotionally loud. They don't overshare. They don't perform vulnerability. They allow connection to develop organically. That steady presence gives others permission to tune in emotionally. This is one of the most overlooked ways to attract women, especially as you get older. Attraction at this stage of life is not built on noise. It is built on resonance, calm strength, emotional steadiness. That is masculine energy expressed through restraint and awareness, not pressure. Do not rush to label this dynamic. Do not test it. Do not poke at it to see if it reacts. Be grounded. Let it reveal itself. When someone is emotionally attuned to you, they show it in small, consistent ways. They remember how you sound when you are drained. They notice when your patience thins. They sense when something weighs on you, even if you smile through it. And they respond not because they were told to, but because their system feels it. That response is the proof. If this hit home, don't stay silent. Drop a comment right now and write, "My energy is felt, not explained." Like this video, subscribe for more sharp psychology tricks, and remember this truth every day. When someone feels you without words, attachment is already there. Sign 3. They struggle when you pull away even slightly. When you slightly pull back and someone immediately feels it, that reaction is not random. It is not coincidence. It is not imagination. It is one of the clearest silent signs of deep emotional attachment. True attachment does not need announcements. It responds to shifts before words ever appear. This is where psychology, lived experience, and old Stoic wisdom meet in a powerful way that every man must understand if he wants clarity, control, and peace in modern life. You do not raise your voice, you do not argue, you do not threaten, you simply become quieter. Your replies take longer. Your tone changes just enough to be felt, but not explained. You stop sharing details, you conserve energy. And suddenly, without explanation, the other person feels unsettled. They sense something is different. Not because you said it, but because emotional attachment makes distance impossible to ignore. Psychology calls this attachment sensitivity. As William James once said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. When appreciation feels uncertain, the nervous system reacts before logic ever steps in. To the outside world, nothing has changed. To the attached person, everything feels off. This happens because emotional attachment wires the brain to treat your presence as stability and safety. When that stabilizing signal weakens, even slightly, the system responds automatically. They may not accuse you. They may not confront you. They may not even understand what they feel. Instead, their behavior shifts. They ask more questions. They check in more often. They seek reassurance without asking for it directly. This is not about control. This is not manipulation. This is the nervous system protecting something important. When someone is emotionally attached, your presence becomes part of their inner balance. When that balance is disturbed, reaction is inevitable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity." In modern relationships, small changes echo loudly in attached hearts. What makes this sign powerful is this: they are not reacting because you did something wrong. They are reacting because you matter. Your attention matters. Your consistency matters. Your emotional availability matters. Even a small withdrawal feels significant because their comfort has become connected to you. You may think you are simply busy, simply tired, simply focused on your responsibilities. That is normal for a man with purpose, but for someone attached, your absence is not neutral. It feels like losing access to something that brings calm and familiarity. They do not just miss conversation, they miss the feeling you give them. That feeling helps regulate their stress and emotional rhythm. When it wavers, they feel unsettled. It may appear as overthinking. It may appear as insecurity. It may appear as restlessness. But beneath it all is one truth. They fear losing closeness. Not necessarily losing you entirely, but losing the emotional connection that feels safe. People who are not attached adapt easily to distance. They move forward without emotional disturbance. But attached people feel the shift immediately. Even when they hide it, their behavior tells the truth. This understanding gives you power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. This is where Stoicism win becomes real. Old Stoic wisdom teaches that mastery begins with awareness, not reaction. When you understand the weight of your presence, you stop guessing, you stop over-explaining, you stop chasing validation, you lead with calm, you lead with intention. You recognize that consistency creates security, inconsistency creates noise. In modern life, where attention is scattered and emotional stability is rare, the man who controls his energy stands out, not because he is loud, but because he is steady. This steadiness builds an iron mind. An iron mind does not panic when others react. An iron mind does not apologize for healthy distance. An iron mind knows when to step forward and when to step back. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Emotional freedom comes from understanding dynamics, not being controlled by them. The lesson is simple. If someone reacts strongly when you pull back slightly, your presence already matters to them. That is not something to exploit. That is something to handle with responsibility. Be intentional with your presence. Be deliberate with your distance. Never underestimate the silent signals you send. Consistency builds trust. Calm builds attraction. Clarity builds respect. This is how men win quietly. This is how Stoicism win plays out in real life. This is how you build an iron mind. You do not chase. You do not fear silence. You do not lose direction when emotions shift around you. You are not responsible for managing someone else's emotions, but you are responsible for understanding your impact. Know it. Use it wisely. Stay grounded. Stay clear. Stay strong. Old Stoic wisdom reminds us that power begins within. When you understand attachment and emotional distance, you stop reacting to life. You start directing it. Sign 4. They find reasons to stay connected even when there's no real reason. Sign 4 is the one most people overlook, not because it isn't powerful, but because it never announces itself. It moves quietly, almost politely, and that is exactly why it works. This is the sign where someone keeps finding reasons to stay connected to you even when there is no obvious reason to do so, and don't dismiss this as coincidence. Don't brush it off as casual, and don't tell yourself it means nothing, because psychology says otherwise. They don't chase you loudly, they don't flood your phone, they don't demand explanations or attention, and they never stand in front of you and confess their feelings, yet somehow they are always there. They send a short message about something small. They forward a post and say it reminded them of you. They ask a question they could have answered in 10 seconds with a search. They bring up a shared memory that doesn't change anything, doesn't require action, but keeps the thread alive. Be honest with yourself. If you step back and really look at it, there is no strong practical reason for them to still be present, and yet they are. That is not random. That is not boredom. That is not accidental. That is proximity-seeking behavior, a concept well known in psychology tricks that explains how attachment expresses itself when a person is emotionally invested but emotionally cautious. When someone becomes attached, their mind doesn't rush toward dramatic gestures. It looks for safe routes, small bridges that maintain closeness without forcing vulnerability. That is how to fall in love without risking immediate loss, and the brain knows this instinctively. Instead of saying, "I don't want to lose you," they say, "Did you see this?" Instead of saying, "I miss you," they say, "This made me think of you." That is not manipulation. That is self-protection. Attachment creates a strange tension inside people where two fears exist at the same time: the fear of losing the person and the fear of revealing how deeply they care. You must understand this tension to understand the behavior. Saying too much risks rejection. Saying nothing risks disappearance. So they choose the middle ground: presence without confession, visibility without pressure. They stay close enough to matter, but far enough to feel safe. That is not weakness. That is emotional intelligence operating quietly. This is especially clear when you look through the lens of female psychology, where connection is often preserved through continuity rather than confrontation, through consistency rather than intensity. They don't vanish, they don't cut the cord, they don't let silence stretch long enough to become an ending. They gently place themselves back into your awareness, again and again, without ever demanding anything in return. Be clear about this. We do not repeatedly think about people who do not matter to us emotionally. The human mind is efficient. It does not waste emotional energy without reason. Repetition is attachment. Consistency is care. And frequency without obligation is one of the clearest psychology tricks that reveals emotional investment. If someone keeps finding small, ordinary, almost invisible reasons to stay connected to you, it's because losing access to you would feel like losing something meaningful, something stabilizing, something emotionally valuable, even if they are not ready to name it yet. Don't underestimate the power of small gestures repeated over time. Big declarations can be impulsive. Quiet consistency is deliberate. This is how emotional bonds survive uncertainty. This is how people stay close when they are not ready to step forward. This is how to fall in love slowly, safely, and deeply without ever saying the words out loud. And here's the part most people miss. This behavior is not about attention seeking. It is about connection maintenance. It is the emotional equivalent of leaving a light on in a room so it never feels completely empty. They are telling you, without telling you, "I am still here." They are saying, "You still matter." They are saying, "I am not ready to let this go." Be attentive. Don't rush to label it. Don't pressure it into a confession. Don't dismiss it as meaningless. That is where many people make the mistake. They look for grand signs and overlook the quiet ones. But psychology, especially female psychology, teaches us that attachment often speaks in whispers, not declarations. If you want to understand how to fall in love, or how someone else may already be falling for you, watch what they maintain, not what they announce. Watch who stays when there is no obligation to stay. Watch who finds reasons when reasons are unnecessary. That is where the truth lives. That is where real emotional investment reveals itself. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. If you understood this sign, you're no longer guessing, you're seeing clearly. Most men miss quiet attachment because they wait for loud words instead of steady presence. Don't be that man. Be the one who recognizes consistency, repetition, and subtle effort for what it truly is. Comment this sentence to lock it in. I recognize quiet attachment, and I no longer confuse consistency with coincidence. Sign 5, they protect you even quietly. Sign 5 is one of the most revealing and also one of the most misunderstood because real attachment does not always speak. It often acts in silence. Sometimes attachment doesn't announce itself with grand words or dramatic gestures. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need witnesses. It shows up quietly in the way someone protects you without being asked, in the way they notice shifts in your mood before you say a word, in the way they sense when something in your life feels heavier than usual. Don't overlook this. Don't assume it's accidental. Be aware. They notice when your tone changes. They notice when stress sits behind your eyes. They notice when a small inconvenience keeps repeating in your life. And without making a scene, without turning it into a performance, they step in. Sometimes it's a simple check-in at the right moment. Sometimes it's offering help before you ask. Sometimes it's quietly redirecting a situation that could cause you discomfort. That is not coincidence. That is care in motion. Psychology explains this as emotional bonding, but in real life, it feels like something deeper. When someone is attached, your comfort becomes linked to their emotional balance. Your stress unsettles them. Your peace steadies them. That is how the human nervous system responds to attachment. It becomes alert, not anxious, but attentive, protective, not controlling, but present. You must understand this distinction if you want to read people clearly. This kind of protection is subtle, and that is why many men miss it. They expect protection to look loud, bold, or obvious. But real protection often looks like prevention. It looks like awareness. It looks like someone quietly making sure you're okay before you even realize you weren't. They may step in socially to soften tension. They may give advice without forcing it. They may adjust their behavior to reduce your stress. They may shield you from unnecessary pressure without ever mentioning it. Be clear about this. They are not doing it to impress you. They are not doing it to earn points. They are not doing it to be seen. This is not conscious heroism. This is subconscious care. Their mind is already scanning for ways to keep you safe, steady, and supported. That is attachment operating beneath the surface. And for a high-value man, recognizing this matters. A high-value man doesn't chase noise. He understands quiet signals. He observes behavior over time. He sees who protects his peace, not just who flatters his ego. If your presence triggers someone's instinct to protect rather than compete, that says more than 1,000 compliments ever could. Protection also shows up in prioritization, and this is where many men underestimate its power. When someone is attached, your needs don't feel like an inconvenience to them. They feel relevant. They feel personal. They may rearrange their schedule without announcing it. They may offer support without making you feel indebted. They may stand up for you in rooms you're not even in. Don't ignore that. Be attentive. This is one of the clearest indicators of emotional investment because it costs energy, attention, and intention. Psychology is very clear on this point. We protect what we value emotionally. We guard what feels connected to our sense of stability. And when someone quietly protects you, it means your well-being has become part of their internal world. This is especially important for men who want to attract women without forcing outcomes. When masculine energy is grounded and calm, it doesn't demand reassurance. It recognizes alignment. Masculine energy doesn't chase validation. It notices who shows up consistently, who invests without pressure, who cares without needing credit. That is how a high-value man moves. He doesn't confuse noise with depth. He understands that real attachment often whispers. There is also an emotional mirroring that happens here that many people fail to notice. When you're uncomfortable, they feel it. When you're under pressure, their attention sharpens. When you're threatened, even subtly, something inside them responds. Not aggressively, not dramatically, responsively. This is the brain's attachment system activating. Your emotional state matters to them more than they consciously realize. That's why this kind of care often appears even when you haven't asked for it. Attachment creates vigilance. It creates sensitivity. It creates a quiet sense of responsibility. And no, this doesn't mean obligation or control. It means connection. It means loyalty forming without contracts. It means care without conditions. If you want to attract women in a healthy, grounded way, you must learn to respect this kind of attachment. Don't test it. Don't exploit it. Don't take it for granted. Be present. Be steady. Be aware. Masculine energy thrives on responsibility, not entitlement. And when you recognize quiet protection, you respond with consistency, not confusion. This is why sign 5 is so powerful. It reveals attachment at its most honest level. Words can be rehearsed, gestures can be exaggerated, but subconscious protection cannot be faked for long. It emerges naturally when someone is emotionally invested. They don't say, "I care about you." They show it by staying alert to your world. They don't say, "You matter to me." They prove it by making sure you're okay, even when no one is watching. That is their way of staying close. That is their way of expressing loyalty. That is their way of silently saying, "You matter to me. I want to be here for you." A high-value man understands this language. He doesn't rush it. He doesn't dismiss it. He honors it with calm confidence. And that is exactly what helps him attract women naturally, through grounded masculine energy, through awareness, and through respect for what is quietly real rather than loudly performed. Sign 6. They adjust their behavior to make you more comfortable. Sign 6 is one of the most revealing because it is silent, precise, and impossible to fake. They adjust their behavior to make you more comfortable, not once, not loudly, not for attention, but consistently, naturally, and without ever announcing it. They soften their tone when they speak to you. They choose their words more carefully. They time their messages differently. They give you space when you need it and step closer when you don't ask, but clearly signal it. In group settings, they subtly shift how they act so you never feel exposed, rushed, or dismissed. This is not politeness. This is not coincidence. This is emotional alignment. Human beings do not reshape their habits for someone they don't care about. As psychologist William James once said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. And when someone adapts themselves to your emotional rhythm, they are doing far more than appreciating you. They are prioritizing you. In modern life, where attention is scattered, patience is thin, and everyone is guarding their own comfort first, this kind of behavioral adjustment is rare and valuable. It requires awareness. It requires effort. It requires attachment. Men who understand Old Stoic wisdom know this truth well. Actions reveal allegiance, not words. Words are cheap. Behavior is costly. Time, energy, and restraint are the real currencies. When someone quietly pays those costs for you, they are invested. This is where Stoicism win becomes practical, not philosophical. You observe. You don't chase validation. You don't interrogate feelings. You watch patterns. Consistency over time. Adjustment without complaint. Presence without pressure. That is how attachment shows itself in the real world. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." And the same principle applies here. People who are attached don't talk about caring. They demonstrate it by becoming easier to be around for you. They remove friction. They reduce emotional noise. They create calm. And calm is not accidental. Calm is designed. In relationships, comfort is built by intention. If someone changes how they move through conversations, how they handle conflict, how they pace interaction, just so you feel steady, they are signaling something powerful. Your internal state matters to them. That is attachment at a deep psychological level. For men between 35 and 70, this matters more than dramatic gestures or loud promises. At this stage of life, you've seen enough talk, you've heard enough claims, you've learned that stability beats excitement and consistency beats charm. An iron mind recognizes this instantly. You don't dismiss it, you don't inflate it, you respect it. You respond with grounded leadership, not emotional reaction. Modern life rewards those who stay centered, who understand people without needing to control them, who can accept loyalty without demanding it. This is where Old Stoic wisdom meets emotional intelligence. You stay observant. You stay calm. You don't rush conclusions. You let behavior speak. And when it speaks repeatedly, clearly, and quietly, you listen. The advice is simple but powerful. Don't overlook those who make your life smoother without asking for credit. Don't confuse noise for depth. Don't confuse intensity for commitment. Attachment that lasts is subtle, disciplined, and steady. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, the creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn, and deep attachment begins the same way, in small, almost invisible adjustments that grow stronger over time. This is how you win at relationships without games. This is Stoicism win in action. You remain composed. You remain self-respecting. You acknowledge effort with consistency, not dependency. You lead with clarity. You protect your peace. And when someone aligns themselves with that peace, when they adjust their behavior to preserve it, you recognize it for what it is: quiet loyalty. This is the psychology that separates boys from men, confusion from clarity, chaos from mastery. Build your iron mind, watch behavior, trust patterns, respect silence. That is how you master life. If this insight spoke to you, take a moment to support the channel. Like this video, share it with someone who values clarity over noise, and subscribe for more practical psychology and timeless wisdom. To lock this lesson into your mind and strengthen your awareness, comment this affirmation below and make it yours. I recognize real attachment through consistent actions, not words. Sign 7. Your approval matters to them more than they admit. Sign 7 is subtle, quiet, and incredibly revealing. Your approval matters to them far more than they will ever admit, and once you learn to notice it, you cannot unsee it. They may act relaxed, even casual, as if your opinion is just another sound in the room, but don't be fooled. Watch what happens after you speak. Watch how they adjust, refine, reconsider. That is where the truth lives. When you light up about an idea, they carry that glow with them long after the conversation ends. When you sound disappointed, even briefly, it lingers in their thoughts like an unanswered question. They rarely ask, "Did I do okay?" They don't need to. Instead, they listen harder. They remember small reactions you forgot you gave. They replay your tone, not just your words. Be clear about this. Indifference is often a performance. Attachment works in silence. A deeply attached person measures themselves against your reactions, not because they are unsure, but because your opinion has quietly become a compass. Don't assume this shows weakness. It doesn't. It shows investment. In psychology tricks, this is known as emotional weighting, where one person's feedback carries more internal value than anyone else's, and in female psychology especially, this often appears not through praise-seeking, but through alignment. They start making choices that would make sense to you, even when you are not there. They choose words you respect. They avoid actions they know would disappoint you. They might say, "I didn't even think about it." But that is rarely true. They did think about it. They just don't want to reveal how much your approval already lives inside their decision-making process. Be attentive to the moments when they casually mention your reaction in passing, or when they seem relieved after you agree with them, or slightly unsettled when you don't. That emotional shift is not accidental. That is attachment adjusting its posture. You must also notice how they grow when you encourage them. Your approval doesn't inflate their ego. It steadies them. It sharpens them. It gives their efforts direction. That is one of the most overlooked elements in how to fall in love, because love at this stage is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet calibration. It is someone silently asking, "Am I still aligned with you?" without ever saying the words. Don't dismiss this sign just because it lacks grand gestures. Grand gestures are easy. Internal influence is not. In psychology tricks, the strongest bond is often the one that changes behavior without demanding attention, and this is why this sign carries so much weight. They may laugh it off, they may act unaffected. But notice how your disappointment changes their energy, how your excitement fuels their momentum, how your respect seems to matter more than applause from anyone else. That is not coincidence. That is emotional priority. In female psychology, this often appears as quiet consistency rather than dramatic reassurance, seeking, and understanding. This helps you see attachment for what it really is, not what movies portray. Be mindful. Don't ignore it. Don't test it cruelly. That is not wisdom. That is sabotage. Instead, recognize the responsibility that comes with being someone whose approval matters. You must be intentional. You must be honest. Because when someone carries your opinion with them into their private decisions, you are already closer than words suggest. This is how to fall in love without announcing it, without rushing it, without forcing it. It happens when approval becomes internalized, when respect turns into guidance, when your voice becomes part of their inner dialogue. Psychology tricks will tell you to look for attention, look deeper, look for influence, look for the quiet moments where your reaction changes the course of their choices. That is where attachment reveals itself, calmly, steadily, and undeniably. Sign 8, they make you part of their future thinking. Sign 8 is the quietest sign of all and also the most powerful. They make you part of their future thinking, not as an announcement, not as a promise, but as a natural assumption. They don't sit you down and say, "I see you in my future." They do something far more revealing. They talk about tomorrow as if you're already there. Listen closely. When they mention a trip they might take next year, you're in the story. When they talk about changing careers, moving cities, or building something meaningful, your presence is woven into the picture without effort. That is not an accident. That is psychology in motion. That is the mind deciding before the mouth ever speaks. Don't underestimate this. Words can lie. Mental placement rarely does. When someone includes you in their long-term thinking, it means you have already crossed from being an option to being part of the structure. That is where attachment becomes real. Be clear about what is happening here. The human brain does not plan with uncertainty. It plans with stability. When you appear in their future thoughts, it means you represent safety, continuity, and emotional relevance. Psychologically, this is called future projection, and it only happens when someone feels internally settled with you. They are not testing the idea, they are rehearsing it. They may say, "If we ever did that," or "one day we could." But notice the language. It's inclusive, it's shared, it's calm. There is no pressure in it because they are not trying to convince you or themselves. They are simply revealing how their inner world is already organized. That is why this sign matters deeply to a high-value man. You don't chase inclusion, you recognize it. You don't force commitment, you observe alignment. Don't rush to label it, don't interrogate it. Be steady. Let the pattern speak. This is also where masculine energy quietly does its work. A grounded man doesn't need constant reassurance. He notices behavior. He notices direction. He understands that when someone starts adjusting their future around his presence, attraction has moved beyond emotion and into intention. This is how you attract women without performing or proving. You hold your frame. You stay consistent. You allow space for their mind to place you where you belong. And when that placement happens, it's effortless. They ask questions about your availability months from now. They reference things you might do together later. They speak in timelines, not fantasies. That is not romance language. That is logistical language. That is real life creeping into imagination. Be aware of it. Respect it. You must understand that this sign is not loud because it doesn't need to be. It is secure. It is settled. There's a quiet metaphor hidden here, one most men miss. Think of the future like a house being built in the mind. Most people are visitors. Some are furniture that can be moved. but a few become part of the foundation. When someone builds their future and you're already accounted for, you are no longer decor. You are structural. That is why they don't dramatize it. You don't dramatize walls. You rely on them. This is especially important for a high-value man to grasp, because reacting too strongly can destabilize what is forming naturally. Don't cling, don't retreat. Be present, be solid. Let your masculine energy remain calm and directional. That steadiness is exactly why you were included in the first place. If you want to attract women at a deeper level, understand this truth. Emotional attachment speaks in plans, not promises. It shows up in calendars, in assumptions, in when instead of if. When they ask about your long-term goals, it's not curiosity, it's compatibility testing. When they align their ideas with your lifestyle, it's not coincidence, it's integration. You must see this clearly so you don't sabotage it by demanding certainty too soon or pretending not to notice. That is where maturity lives. That is where attraction matures into something lasting. So don't look for dramatic confessions. Don't wait for a speech. Watch how you appear in there tomorrow. Watch how naturally you are included. Be observant. Be composed. Be a high-value man who understands that real attachment doesn't knock loudly. It rearranges the room quietly and leaves space for you without asking permission. When someone makes you part of their future thinking, they have already chosen you internally. Everything else is just timing. Hey, my friend, thank you for staying with me until the end. Remember this: real attachment doesn't always come with big words or loud confessions. It shows up quietly in how someone pays attention to you, protects your feelings, and stays present even when no one is watching. Don't ignore those small signs. Trust what you observe and how you feel, because your emotions are not random. They are signals worth listening to. If this message spoke to your heart, gently tap the like button to honor your awareness. Leave a comment below saying, "I see the signs now," and let me know you're here. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next video will reveal what it truly means when someone is deeply attached but afraid to admit it. Your feelings matter. Understanding them is the first step toward deeper, healthier human connections. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Take care.